Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Absolute Wonder Woman issue 14 by Kelly Thompson, Matthias Bergara and Jordi Belair. Wonder Woman's battle with the energy monster intensifies as she has learned that the creature exists because she herself exists, and it's the price she is paying for using her magic. Diana feels herself losing the fight, thinking that her life will be cut short by the creature, but she stops herself, reminding herself that that thing's power is magnifying her emotions and darkness. She begins to recognize part of herself in the creature, like her pride, stubbornness, and desire. Diana fighting a doppelganger or an evil inverse of herself, like I said in my review of the last issue, is almost kind of like a rite of passage for a superhero. There's a myriad of stories of heroes overcoming their dark mirrors and in turn their own faults, and Diana's story here is no different. But the interesting thing is how quickly Diana has picked up on it. You know, she recognizes this thing is an inverse of her and it's affecting her, and she's trying to figure out what to do against it. She's rejecting all the things that she could be that this thing represents. Things that when you do one of these stories usually happens a little later on into the second part of the third act. Something just before the hero gets the upper hand and wins the day. Wonder Woman figures that her hits don't really do much to the creature, but it can absolutely shred her, which doesn't seem fair, so she employs one of her magical vials, putting a sleep spell on it and tossing it at the being, causing it to explode and scream in pain. Diana figures that it's vulnerable to magic, but it still feels like it barely does a dent to it. As the being speeds off defeated for now, Diana collapses, utterly exhausted by the fight. As Diana rests, she is visited by the astral form of Zatanna, who thinks as Diana opens her eyes, thinks the woman's striking look hits like a Mack truck. Diana asks who and what they are, but Zatanna doesn't answer, instead using her magic on Diana, speaking in reverse so she can bind Diana to her while she is in her presence. I'm liking Absolute Zatanna and how she just talks backwards all the time. She's always in backwards speak. I'm sure it's going to annoy some people to try and figure out what she's saying, but it's quite a fun gimmick and one that I quite like. Her look is also really cool. It's this astral goth punk aesthetic and it's just fantastic as well. And Matthias Bergara does look like they're having fun drawing this version of the character, and I love all the little details around Zatanna, like these ethereal stars and glowing lights and stuff, make her feel like a little bit more of a magical being. Diana realizes that the woman is trying to bind her with magic, rushing to stop the magician, but the magic explodes around Diana and Zatanna disappears, something Diana doesn't think is a good thing. So this is actually all we're going to get of Zatanna in this arc, and I assumed that this next arc would have been about Zatanna, like Zatanna might have been behind the creature Diana was fighting, like using it as a proxy to sort of test her for Veronica Cale, but I guess like her doing this binding magic is, you know, setting up a story later on after the Batman team up. But it's a little strange that we got the tease of Zatanna at the end of the last arc and it looked like they were about to like unleash her on Diana, and then we cut to like a different story altogether. Diana heads back to the Huron, telling the others that she has solved the puzzle, the answer being her death. Etta and the others are confused, so Diana tells them that this creature is the price for her existence, as while she is a force for good, a balance is needed to be maintained, so the forces of evil are given their own version of Diana of sorts. So as long as Wonder Woman exists on Earth, this creature will as well. Etta and GF find that insane and wrong, but while Diana thinking the world of magic is trying to balance things out, her assessment of it is off, since the world is actually messed up. The women explain to Diana how, for the most part, bad people are in charge of the world, with billionaires having their boots on everyone's necks, corporations poisoning the earth unchecked, and tech companies are spying on everyone. So how is any of that balanced? Gia believes that Diana being there is a long overdue rebalancing of the world. The book has stayed rather self-contained for the last 14 issues, and like now with the looming Batman team up in the next issue, things are starting to open up a little bit more for the character, and all of the Absolute books have been doing this, where they're all around these, you know, issue 14, 15, 16 issues, they're starting to sort of branch out and sort of put the feelers out for the larger world, and I think that's great because it's given, you've got 14 issues of character development before getting to like team-ups or exploring a different part of the world that these characters aren't usually from. Thompson also using Diana's little group here being the ones telling her and explaining her what the world is really quite cool. Again, it's great use of these characters being her support group and, you know, filling her in on details for a mission or, you know, doing the research for her while she's out in the field. It's a great dynamic. Diana believes that her friends are right, knowing Hecate and the gods are often cryptic in their riddles, but so far they've all noted how the world is out of sync and darker than it's meant to be, with justice being such a rare thing and hopelessness running rampant. Etta brainstorms what they could do as Diana asks where the creature will strike next. The women believe that they will either strike in Turkey or in Greece, the place where Diana hopes this one will strike since it'll be easier for her to call the gods from a sacred site. Gia notes how it sounds like Diana has a plan, but Diana says it's more of a prayer than a plan. She speeds out of the Heron, heading to Samothrace in Greece. Diana feels the creature is close and remembers how Circe always told her that being near her was like being enveloped in love and kindness, but with this creature, it emanates darkness and anger, which she believes is the opposite of all she is. The creature does indeed appear and attacks Diana, who knows that to enact her plan, she will need to bleed, and bleed quite profusely. Diana continuing to battle this thing not by battling it is thoroughly interesting, and as I said before, she learned the ins and outs of this thing pretty earlier than a lot of characters usually do in doppelganger inverse storylines, so it gives the book time to try out a bunch of creative options to deal with the threat, with Diana choosing not to fight it directly and not to engage in it. She's tried it, it didn't work, so she's going to try the next thing. Diana allows the creature to cut and beat her, making her bleed all over the rocky beach. As her blood seeps into the ground, Diana calls to Demeter, hoping that she accepts her offering of blood and pain, wanting her to use it to grant her an audience with Gaia. Suddenly a bolt of lightning hits Diana, carving a deep gash into the earth which swallows Diana up into a black void. Diana lights a small red light from her bag so she can see in the dark, knowing Gaia is not to be trifled with since she is the grandmother of all gods, older than all of them and hopefully the wisest. So there's a really neat bit of detail here in the art, and that is that red light. I really like the idea of a red light, not just because it casts like a great blood red light over everything that we see in this next couple of sequences, but because red light is often used in dark situations because it doesn't ruin your night vision in your eyes, so you can still see in the dark and have a light with you. And I kind of like that little detail that Bagara has put here, and it just makes it look really fantastic. It's just black void with this just little shining red light floating through it. I can also see where this is going, and it's quite awesome. Diana is going to speak directly to the earth and reveal that it is in an imbalance in the hope that Gaia will rectify the problem, and that's such an interesting way to combat an enemy and also gives us an in to explore more of the gods of this world. And the way Diana is talking about them, they are completely unaware of what Darkseid has done to this world, so I wonder if once they find out, they'll be very angry and want to rebel against him. The earth comes alive around Diana, tangling her in its vines as it begins to suffocate her. Not wanting to be swallowed up, Diana manages to unsheath her axe, slashing the vines away. She stops after a while, finding that this isn't the right way to get an audience with Gaia, so she submits, bowing down and asking for forgiveness. She says that she comes seeking justice for all as the vines reclaim her, pulling her deep down into them. Diana hopes that her mother will protect her, thinking that she's actually going to see her very soon, but realizes the vines weren't pulling her in to suffocate her, they were pulling her into a giant cavern, where Wonder Woman comes face to face with Gaia. I love the design of Gaia, who's often portrayed as a very beautiful woman or an angelic being, but here Gaia is a giant mountain covered in moss and trees and vines and dirt, fittingly monstrous for the absolute universe, but also how I feel like a god of the earth should look like. Gaia's voice booms through the cavern, telling Diana that she doesn't belong on Earth, and while she hears her request, she cannot help her as the world sought to correct the imbalance in magic Diana brings. Diana tells the goddess that she has been tricked, something that angers the goddess, and Diana knows that gods hate being tricked, so she must choose her words carefully. Diana explains that there is an imbalance in the world, but doesn't believe her to be the aberration, and if she takes a closer look, Gaia will see that they have been tricked. The goddess tells Diana that she cannot tell her what she can and cannot see, but Diana believes that the closer the goddess is to everything, the harder it can be to actually see. Gaia looks out at the world and finds Diana is telling the truth, seeing famine, riots, peacemakers massacring people, cities being bombed, and the party animals rampaging through Gotham. This is a great explanation on why the world never saw any of this and had any problem with it, since it's looking at the larger picture, which showed the world is fine, the world's currently spinning correctly, it's all good. But as Diana puts it, the closer this thing is looking at everything, it can't see any of these smaller incidents that when you add them all up, you realize, oh, the world is quite a mess right now. Gaia knows that Diana is right, something is indeed wrong with the world, and so they will fight the darkness with Wonder Woman. Gaia asks if Diana will give her life in her name, and Wonder Woman doesn't hesitate, saying that she is willing to, and is sent back up to the Earth's surface to confront her evil inverse. Diana knows that the being is not real, relaxing as they are dragged forcibly underground to Gaia's vines. Diana justifying what happened to the creature is interesting, since she realizes as an inverse of her, the creature isn't actually a human being and probably doesn't actually feel anything, or at least any sort of love or compassion or anything for anything. Therefore, it kind of dodges her rules of killing, since the thing isn't really a sentient being, as it's the opposite of everything Diana is. She still feels sadness for it though, which I liked, and it being dragged away kind of makes me think it might come back at a later date, maybe as like a new villain, maybe it turns into one of Diana's rogues that we know and love, who knows, but I'm intrigued to see if they actually end up bringing that character back. Diana returns to the Huron, thanking the sleeping Etta, Gia and Barbara for all of their help. She hears the breaking news alerts and heads to the inner sanctum of the Huron, finding Steve poring over information. Steve asks if Diana wants to talk about what happened, but Diana knows the creature is gone, destroyed by Gaia, so this is the end of the problem. She also mentions that she was cursed by a beautiful witch, wishing the woman had given her name. But Steve, and he says something really interesting here, which is what Diana said to him earlier about there being some power in names, and maybe if Zatanna had told her who she is, Diana would be able to get into her mind, or at least, like confront her as a human being and try to convince Zatanna to stop what she is doing. So keeping that distance from her where Diana doesn't know who this being is stops her from doing that, which is a really interesting way to deal with a hero, and like a hero having to deal with a villain as well. They don't know who they are, so they can't really, meet them on a human level and try to talk things out with them. Steve reveals that he had meetings with the military and they are going to be a problem for Wonder Woman down the line, something Diana knows will happen, but she wants to deal with this one thing at a time. I love Steve and Diana's dynamic here, since it doesn't feel like there is any sort of romantic thing going on here. They are two soldiers fighting battles and they understand each other in that way, and there's a respect between them. And I think stripping out that romantic aspect, at least for now, is a fantastic idea. You don't just immediately go straight to it. You build up to that if that's where that is going, but I don't think it is. Diana asks about the jump drive from the scientist in the maze, and Steve reveals that he has cracked it open, finding that there is more information than they expected, finding it's got information on the Batman, Superman, and the others around the world. So this is further solidifying my theory that Diana is going to be the one who sets up this world's Justice League. She needs friends and allies to help fight the imbalance of this world and the darkness, and she's got a base all set up here with the Huron. Everything is there just waiting for them to pull the trigger on it, and I love that they have not yet. They could have easily done that, but we're getting build up. As I said before, all these books are reaching 14, 15 issues now of just pure character development and the heroes on their own. Before now, we're just starting to come together and we're not jumping right on into it. As they talk, Diana notices something in the news, getting Steve to circle back round to it. The news report comes back on, showing how in Gotham City, a strange symbol has been burned into a wall near the site of a murder victim. Diana recognizes the symbol as the mark of Hecate, meaning that she has got to go to Gotham to figure out what this means. And there's the setup to the next issue team up with Batman. It's straightforward, it gets Diana over into Gotham quick and means we can jump into the team up, which I'm looking forward to, especially because now it's being revealed that Hecate might be involved in stuff that's going on in Gotham. Someone's killing in her name. That's really interesting. How does that work in Gotham? Who is maybe doing this? I'm intrigued to see what Thompson and Snyder have in store for us in the next issue of Absolute Wonder Woman and Absolute Batman. Absolute Wonder Woman issue 14 was a fantastic ending to the Price storyline that continued relying on Diana's creativity to deal with threats. This issue really cracked open the world, both literally and figuratively for Diana, and now she is well aware of the mass imbalance the world created by Darkseid has. I adored how Diana dealt with her dark doppelganger, building wonderfully on the rules and methods that Kelly Thompson has set out for this version of Wonder Woman, and then enacting on those rules in really creative ways. I can't wait for this week's coming team up with Batman and how the world will open even more for Diana of the Wild Isle. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10.